Is Auburn going to actually pull this guy away from big bad Alabama? And this one seems like it might be their best shot here in a while. The fact that this is a battle is a big deal.
Let's hit recruiting. You know that is what the people love to talk about, Austin. Whether it's about stars, whether about a numbers game, who you beat out, who you may be flipping, maybe coming soon. Attractions coming soon, maybe. We'll see. Man, nothing's, as of the recording of this podcast, we're talking about a certain number of commitments that began Auburn football's summer recruiting efforts. There are more that maybe by the time you're watching or listening to this that have occurred, or maybe more news has come out. So keep that in mind. But let's start off with what we know, Austin. 3 commitments in 1 week, technically 4, but I know most people don't count a preferred walk-on, but it's an important position to make sure you take care of. But your commitments for this week will first be wide receiver Bryce Kane from Mobile, Alabama, followed up on the same day, hours later, Kinsley Faustin, safety from Naples, Florida. Friday, Joseph Phillips from Tuskegee, Alabama, a linebacker. And then also mixed in there from Auburn, Alabama, a long snapper of J.R. Buckner, have decided to sign up, commit, be part of the Tigers. So a nice little group for this week, and we'll talk about what may be coming in just a second. But let's open the floor up and talk about these guys a little bit. What sticks out to you?
Yeah, huge weekend for Auburn. There will be people that say, oh, these guys are 3 stars or 4 stars. They're not the 5 stars. This kind of string of success of recruiting, as we talked about a little bit pre-show, has not happened very frequently over the last few years. So really exciting times for Auburn. We'll talk about it like you said, but just along with these guys who actually committed, there's been a host of guys of that higher echelon of, ranked talent that's been in Auburn recently. So really exciting times in recruiting. The big one that we just have to talk about because it was such a notable thing this week was Joseph Phillips committing to Auburn.
Yes.
A 4-star linebacker out to Tuskegee right down the road, as you mentioned. But a true battle between Auburn and Georgia that Hugh Freeze won, and is big. We've talked about it before, but Auburn has to win the battles between Alabama and between Georgia in the recruiting on the field. It just has to happen for them to keep up, and that's a true battle they won. It's a big game changer and really staple of this recruiting class so far for the Freeze era, and so big time. And really exciting to see. People definitely, I think, that have been kind of lackadaisical about recruiting the last few years are caused to jump back into it because of something exciting like that. So really, really big deal. Props to them. And then, the other 2 guys it's not like they're slouches either. Bryce Kane, you beat an SEC foe in Ole Miss out for him. Kinsley Faustin, a safety in the secondary that continues to be deeper and deeper. So you just love it. You love that kind of trajectory they're on, and hopefully they continue this motivation. It seems like they will.
There's a couple ways you could chop up these commitments in this week and talk about them individually or as a group. I'll try to do a little bit of that. First of all, let's talk about Joseph Phillips. That's the big one, right? Stars wise, perception wise, it's important to win the battles between Alabama and Georgia. I would add into that as well. It's not as prominent as those 2, but Florida as well, because those are our 3 pipeline states. Obviously, the state that you're in of Alabama, Georgia, and then Florida. That's where we traditionally draw the majority of our guys from. It's usually in that order, 1, 2, and 3. So those are your kind of schools, and maybe throw Florida State in there as well, who you're competing with, and you can kind of go back and look at how we've done past 2 years. Before that, and now going forward, battles that we may or may not be winning. This is one of them, and that's a huge thing. You're going to hear Georgia fans say, well, it's the same thing. And look, there's our fans that do it too.
Yep.
We didn't want them anyway. And I would also caution folks that, remember, this isn't over. You got to make sure that you show out on the field, that you continue to build that relationship. And coaches know this. We're just talking about it now, and we're not doing their jobs for them. But this one may not be over. But for now, Auburn has won the battle between Georgia. The other thing that sticks out to me from this group, even including our preferred walk-on long snapper, J.R. Buckner, you have got a group of guys that are all from your backyard or close to it. You know, you've got Auburn, Alabama, Tuskegee, and then Mobile is close enough, and it's a Alabama stronghold. So I would argue too, with Bryce Kane down there, that, you know, you went in, even if Alabama didn't want him, maybe necessarily, you went into their territory and took somebody out. So just wins abound when you really kind of chop this thing up and talk about them.
Well, and especially when it's a first-year coaching staff, right? Like Hugh Freeze, we know, has been in the SEC and knows what kind of caliber guys he needs to compete in this league. But you're right, for his group to kind of establish these relationships with these guys this early is big. You know, there's certainly more guys they'd be getting and more battles that they're going to have to win. But this continues to be a steady rise in trajectory of momentum. And I'm hoping that this is showing bigger things to come for sure.
I believe also, and this is a fun little tie for you and me being big Malzahn fans, I believe Kinsley Falston was pretty high on UCF's list, and now Gus Malzahn being down there. I think we beat out the old coach for one, as much as you and I may love the guy, and we won't rehash our history with all that storyline and stuff like that. But it is still nice to know that we can beat out a former coach and convince them. I think we've got a leg up. It's Auburn, UCF. You may have won that bowl game, but you know, and it's always, isn't it not weird to think about that he was the coach then that lost to the team?
Yeah, it's super weird.
It's a weird dynamic there, but all different ways to look at those four guys that, as of this recording, have committed. Very briefly, let's look at what may be coming down the pipe. As you mentioned, these are summer camps going on, have been going on, and taking a lot of official visits where they really get shown the red carpet. You can follow some of these guys on social media and see what all the staff does for them, whether it's stuff they get that when they come to the hotel, messages with certain former players, or calls. They get shown around campus. They get the best rooms, you know, on campus.
Right.
Red carpet's thrown out, basically, or the orange and blue carpet, I should say. We got no red here. No red here. A couple of names that are out there that people may want to be paying attention to. Khalil House, an offensive lineman, would be one. Malik Blockton from Pike Road, which is not too far away from Auburn. Defensive lineman in July, I think, is committing, and I think Auburn is favored for both of those. So maybe that's changed by the time you're watching or listening to this. But there's a big one out there. And when we talked about flips at the beginning of this, that is getting really interesting. And whether or not this guy comes to Auburn, the fact that Auburn's making it a game is showing you how things are changing from the last 2 years to now. Perry Thompson, current Alabama commit. If Auburn swings that one, boy, social media is just going to explode, don't you think?
Oh, it'd be ridiculous. And obviously, as you're touching on it, he was on campus this weekend. One a lot of people have been paying attention to, and I think Perry has said himself, this is an Auburn-Alabama battle. It's down to them two. That's all I'm looking at. And so that's always going to raise eyebrows. A 5-star wide receiver from Foley High School in the Mobile area, as you touched on, that 251 area code. And so it's definitely one of those that seems to happen every recruiting cycle. It's like, is Auburn going to actually pull this guy away from big bad Alabama?
Mm-hmm.
And this one seems like it might be their best shot here in a while. And so we'll have to see what happens. I think he left the visit saying it was really impressive. You know, it's Auburn or Alabama. I'm trying to decide before the season or whatnot. So that will be one to look at. That is one, as you touched on, Kyle, that everybody's going to say, well, we didn't want him anyway. No, that is one everybody wants. And so that will be interesting to see what happens. And you know, I don't want to play the moral victory card, but I think you kind of touched on too. The fact that this is a battle is a big deal, and hopefully a sign of things to come in future recruiting cycles once this Freeze coaching staff has had time to get in on these guys a little earlier.
Mm-hmm.
You know, that is something that is impressive, that it's just a battle in itself. But hopefully they pull the victory over Alabama and get this guy, and it'd be another one of those program changers for the recruiting cycle first year for sure.
Yeah, it's much easier protecting, I would say, a lead that you have. Well, some would argue maybe the opposite way, but I think in this sense, it's much easier to be working from the strong position than behind position for making ground up for guys, but Hugh Freeze, his staff, seems to be doing that in bounds, whether it's for a name like a Perry Thompson. The last thing I'd like to mention too, what I love is not just the staff getting involved on social media and kind of giving fans hints something's coming, but now you've got players on the teams, and it's happened before, but I've never seen a concerted effort from players that, everybody thinks they know who the players are hinting at, but then you'll see from every position, every offensive, defensive, so nobody knows. Like, everybody thinks, okay, that linebacker committed, so it must mean this linebacker's committed. This wide receiver commented, so it must be this wide receiver. I don't know who they're talking about. We have our guesses, but all I know is I love this all-out recruiting effort that's going in and selling Auburn. And when you combine Auburn in and of itself, that is easy to sell just because it's Auburn, with this type of effort, with this type of cohesion, it's an incredible thing to see. And so I'm loving every bit of it.
Yeah, it's the new age of recruiting, right? Like, it's always on. It never stops. There's graphics out the wazoo. There's videos out the wazoo, photos going off everywhere. And social media is part of it. And, the mystery behind all of it with eyeball emojis and the freeze emoji and all this is fun for the fans, fun for players, I'm sure, because, they're keeping up with the recruiting as much as anybody too, of where their buddies going and where their teammates going and all that. So really exciting. And we'll have to see who these emojis are all talking about. Hopefully we get to find out this week.
Look, when you can get the official Twitter account of Aubrey the Tiger involved in that, that's saying something, my friend.
It's a big deal. It's a big deal.